This is the overview for Kit 2 Theme D, the several facets of the digraph EA. This is an important theme, and it mirrors something that we did in Year 1, where we learned that studying a digraph or an orthographic principle and understanding it deeply allows us to apply that knowledge to the rest of the spelling system. So the big ideas of this theme are that by thoroughly investigating a single grapheme, you learn more about the graphemic dimension of phonology as a whole. This theme will explain the phonemes that can be represented by EA and the circumstances that governs the relationship, the correspondence between the digraphs EA and EE and its usefulness in the spelling of homophones, and how the simple letter sequence EA is not necessarily the digraph EA. In preparing for this theme, and it is a review in a certain extent, we looked at all the different digraphs and single sounds that could make the E sound last year. But in preparing for this, we need to remember that the digraph EA can represent 3 phonemes, 3 different sounds. I'll go over those in a minute. Each of the phonemes represented by EA can also be represented by other graphemes. So it's important to again understand that we're making choices as spellers to use the EA digraph, but those choices are grounded in sound orthographic principles. Some reminders you might want to go over with your students. What is a digraph? A 2-letter string which forms a stable and predictable unit of the spelling system. A digraph represents 1 or more phonemes. The orthographic terms long and short, as well as the vowel hand. And in this theme, we are working with the digraph EA specifically. It can represent the 3 phonemes, long E sound, long A sound, and the short E sound. The main theme in studying one digraph can open up the idea that the spelling system as a whole is predictable. We need to remember that the letter sequence EA in a spelling is not necessarily this digraph. It can be there accidentally by just the way 2 letters are put together, or it can be part of a trigraph, EAR or EAU. One of the things we've worked with across our school is trying to recognize that students can learn a lot from either using practicing handwriting or keyboarding of the digraphs and trigraphs together, because they're a natural system. They often come together. So if you're doing handwriting or keyboarding, having students practice EA together is a good thing to do. The phonology of EA. The digraph EA can represent both long and short vowels. It can represent the long E sound as in clean. It could represent the short E sound as in cleanse, and the long A sound in words such as great, break, and stake. The relationship of EA and EE. It's a productive difference. The digraph EE can only represent one phonological sound, and that is the long E sound. So at times we have to ask ourselves, which do we use, the digraph EE or the digraph EA for the long E? Part of that is generated by how we retain a consistent spelling for a base whose pronunciation may change. We use EE or EA to distinguish homophones, and we choose one that conforms to synchronic etymology. The fundamental orthographic principle that words and elements that have been connected in meaning will, whenever possible, have connected spellings, even if the pronunciation varies according to circumstance. Let's see some examples. The choice between EA and EE, you begin with the base. It happens in base construction. And we always start with, what does the word mean? What are its relatives, and how is it structured? When words have or are perceived by native speakers to have connections of sense and meaning, they will have connections of spelling as well. Here are 2 examples. Seat, EA, and sat with an A. They're connected with the A right there. They both have the same similar meanings, and it is something to go sit down. And as well as eat and ate, the A stays with it, so that you can connect it back in meaning and structure to its relatives. Real word families have common base elements. We spell out the elements because pronunciation shifts. Representing meaning with consistency is the priority of our entire spelling system. Base elements are stable in spelling, however their pronunciation may vary. Justify the need for the digraph EA instead of EE with your students. This is a fun experiment that you can do or inquiry that you can do with your kids. Ask them to determine why the EA was used. They will need to find out what the word means. They will also need to go back and analyze its relatives, and then they'll find some structural components that will give them clues. Both long E and short E can be represented by the EA digraph. The word clean, C-L-E-A-N, we can ask what does it mean and what are its relatives. We end up noticing the word C-L-E-A-N-L-I-N-E-S-S, E-double-S. And from there, I'm not pronouncing it because the pronunciation does change, but we keep the EA digraph because it can represent both the long and short. Even though the pronunciation changed, the structural representation links these two words together based on meaning. So pronouncing them, you would have clean, the long E sound, and cleanliness, the short E sound. Real spellers know that only the EA digraph can do both of those jobs. There's homophonic spellings, where the principal means of distinguishing homophones is the use of different graphemes for a single phoneme that the words in the homophone set have in common. This is kind of an interesting one as well and goes back to the structure. We have the two homophones D-E-A-R and D-E-E-R. D-E-A-R is connected to the word darling, D-A-R-L-I-N-G, and so the clear choice of digraph is the E-A there because it connects it in meaning and structure. A study task with your students, which might be fun to do, is to justify the spelling of C-L-E-A-R and find out why that we've selected the E-A digraph instead of the E-E digraph. Another one to study would be the homophones H-E-A-L, H-E-E-L, and H-E-L-L. The last one there, heal, is a contraction, which stands for he will or he shall. Fairly easy. Then going further, H-E-A-L is connected to one of its relatives, H-E-A-L-T-H, even though that pronunciation shifts. Heal and health are connected in meaning, certainly not to H-E-E-L in its meaning. So again, the E-A digraph is used even when the pronunciation shifts. One study task you could do with your students is to analyze S-T-E-E-L and S-T-E-A-L based on what you know of H-E-A-L and H-E-E-L. Just because the EA appears in a word doesn't mean it is the digraph. This is important to remember because sometimes students, especially when they first start looking at the components of words, they do start to assume that every time they see two letters together it means something. There are times when we have an E and an A together and they don't have anything to do with being a digraph. It's simply that they happen to be sitting next to each other. That could happen if you have a suffix that ends in an E attached to a word that begins in an A, for example. Another reason why this might happen is there are words in Greek of Greek origin that have EA together in them. They're part of the base. They are not digraphs. There's some more information here, and it's in the kit, pages 13 and on, which takes you a little bit further into some more studies. I'm going to leave it at this for now, though. If you're interested in continuing with your students, be sure to check out the theme. Thank you.